Palmyra, Syria, May 2015. The ancient city, 2,000 years old, a jewel of Roman architecture rising from the Syrian desert, was about to fall. ISIS fighters were advancing, the Syrian army was retreating, civilians were fleeing, and an 82-year-old archaeologist named Khaled al-Asaad was making a decision. For 40 years, Khaled had been the director of antiquities for Palmyra. He knew every stone, every column, every inscription of the ancient city. He'd excavated tombs, he'd restored monuments, he'd written books about Palmyra's history. He'd worked with UNESCO to have it designated a World Heritage Site in 1980. Palmyra wasn't just his work, it was his life. And now it was in danger. ISIS had made clear what they did to ancient sites. In Iraq, they destroyed Nimrud, an Assyrian city nearly 3,000 years old, bulldozing it into rubble. They'd smashed artifacts in the Mosul Museum with sledgehammers, filming themselves destroying priceless sculptures while shouting religious slogans. Their ideology declared pre-Islamic art and architecture to be idolatry that must be destroyed. Ancient treasures that had survived millennia, Persian, Assyrian, Greek, Roman, were being systematically obliterated. Palmyra, with its stunning Roman colonnades, its Temple of Bel, its theater and triumphal arch, would be an obvious target. Khaled knew what was coming. He began working frantically to protect what he could. With his son Walid and a small team, he worked to evacuate portable artifacts, statues, inscriptions, smaller treasures that could be moved. They hid some in secret locations. They transported others to Damascus for safekeeping. It was dangerous work. ISIS was getting closer. The Syrian government urged Khaled to leave. His family begged him to evacuate with them. He refused. "I am from Palmyra," he told them, "and I will stay here, even if they kill me." It wasn't bravado, it was a statement of identity. Khaled had been born in Palmyra in 1934. He'd grown up among the ruins. He'd spent every day of his adult life studying, preserving, and teaching about the ancient city. Leaving would mean abandoning not just his work, but his home, his history, himself. On May 21, 2015, ISIS captured Palmyra. The militants swept through the modern town adjacent to the ancient ruins. They executed government soldiers, they established control, and they began hunting for people of interest. Khaled al-Asaad, the man who knew Palmyra better than anyone alive, was exactly who they were looking for. ISIS fighters arrested him in late May or early June 2015. They took him into custody and began interrogating him. They wanted information. Specifically, they wanted to know where Khaled had hidden Palmyra's treasures. During the weeks before ISIS arrived, Khaled had helped evacuate and hide artifacts worth incalculable sums, not just in monetary terms, but in historical and cultural value. Ancient sculptures, gold jewelry, inscribed tablets, pieces of human heritage that couldn't be replaced. ISIS wanted those treasures. Some they would destroy as idols, others they would sell on the black market to fund their operations. Despite their religious rhetoric, they had no problem profiting from the antiquities they claimed to despise. But Khaled wouldn't tell them anything. They held him for a month. They tortured him. The exact details of what they did to an 82-year-old scholar are too horrific to fully document, but reports indicate he was beaten, interrogated repeatedly, subjected to brutal treatment designed to break him. He was an elderly academic, not a soldier. He had no training in resisting interrogation. He had every reason to talk, to save himself, to end the pain, to buy even a few more days of life. He never spoke. On August 18, 2015, ISIS executed Khaled al-Asaad in Palmyra's public square. They beheaded him in front of gathered residents, forced to watch. Then, in an act of calculated desecration, they hung his body from one of the ancient Roman columns he had spent his life protecting and studying. His glasses were still on his face. A handwritten placard hung around his neck, listing fabricated charges: director of idolatry, loyal to the infidel regime, attending infidel conferences. His real crime was simpler. He had refused to betray Palmyra's heritage. The images of his body displayed against the ancient ruins shocked the world. Here was the starkest possible contrast: an elderly scholar who had dedicated his life to preserving human culture, murdered and desecrated by forces determined to destroy it. Khaled's son Walid, who had escaped before ISIS arrived, learned of his father's death through news reports. The family was devastated. The archaeological community was horrified. UNESCO Director General Irina Bokova issued a statement calling the murder an appalling crime against Khaled al-Asaad himself and against Syria's cultural heritage. She described him as one of the leading scholars on the archaeology of Palmyra, whose death was a terrible loss to Syria and to the world. But ISIS wasn't finished with Palmyra. Over the following months, they systematically destroyed parts of the ancient city. They blew up the Temple of Bel, a stunning Roman-era temple that had stood for nearly 2,000 years. They destroyed the Temple of Bal-Shamin. They demolished the Arch of Triumph, a monumental gateway that had survived from 220 CE. They executed more people in the ancient theater, using the Roman stage where performances had been held for centuries as a site for public killings. They were doing exactly what Khaled had tried to prevent: erasing cultural memory, destroying the physical evidence of human history, replacing millennia of civilization with violence and rubble. In December 2016, Syrian and Russian forces recaptured Palmyra from ISIS. What they found was heartbreaking. Much of the ancient site had been damaged or destroyed. The Temple of Bel was rubble. The Arch of Triumph was gone. The theater was scarred by executions. Mines and explosives were scattered throughout the ruins. But some of Palmyra survived, and crucially, many of the artifacts Khaled helped evacuate and hide were still safe. His silence under torture had protected them. His refusal to reveal their locations had saved pieces of heritage that might otherwise have been destroyed or sold. He had died to protect cultural memory, and it worked. Khaled al-Asaad's death became a symbol of cultural heritage defense. International organizations began treating deliberate destruction of cultural heritage as a war crime. In 2016, the International Criminal Court prosecuted Ahmed al-Faqih al-Mahdi for destroying ancient sites in Timbuktu, Mali, the first time the ICC had prosecuted cultural destruction as a standalone war crime. UNESCO intensified efforts to protect endangered heritage sites. Museums worldwide began emergency programs to safeguard collections in conflict zones. Khaled's martyrdom helped the world recognize that destroying cultural heritage isn't just vandalism, it's an attack on human identity, memory, and continuity. It's an attempt to erase the evidence that diverse civilizations have coexisted, that cultures have been shared and celebrated, that humanity has a common heritage. ISIS understood this, which is why they destroyed ancient sites. They wanted to erase history that contradicted their ideology. They wanted to eliminate proof of religious and cultural diversity. They wanted to create a year zero where nothing before their rule mattered. Khaled understood it too, which is why he stayed. He could have left. He could have escaped to Damascus or abroad. At 82, after 40 years of service, no one would have blamed him for fleeing. But he knew that if scholars abandoned their heritage, if everyone who understood the importance of these sites fled, then the destroyers would win without opposition. Someone had to stay. Someone had to bear witness. Someone had to protect what could be protected and refuse to aid the destruction. So he stayed, and he paid the ultimate price. Khaled al-Asaad had spent his career studying ancient history, Roman emperors, Palmyrene queens, the rise and fall of civilizations. He knew that empires crumble, that powerful armies eventually retreat, that zealots and conquerors come and go. But heritage endures, knowledge survives, memory persists, if people are willing to protect it. In his final month, tortured and facing death, Khaled had a choice: save himself by revealing where artifacts were hidden, or stay silent and die. He chose memory over survival. He chose to be one more guardian in an ancient chain, the archaeologists, librarians, scholars, and custodians who across centuries have protected human heritage from those who would destroy it. In 2019, Syria announced plans to rebuild parts of Palmyra damaged by ISIS. Reconstruction is ongoing, though slow and difficult. The Temple of Bel may never be fully restored. The Arch of Triumph has been partially rebuilt using original stones and 3D modeling. The ancient theater still stands, scarred but surviving. And the artifacts Khaled protected, the sculptures, inscriptions, and treasures he hid and refused to reveal, remain safe, preserved for future generations who will study them, learn from them, and connect with the ancient past. Every one of those artifacts exists because an 82-year-old man endured a month of torture and never spoke. That's not just heroism, that's the ultimate act of faith in the future, the belief that human knowledge and cultural memory are worth dying to protect. Khaled al-Asaad knew he wouldn't live to see Palmyra restored. He knew ISIS would likely destroy much of what he'd spent his life protecting. But he also knew that if he revealed the hidden treasures, they would be lost forever. And if he stayed silent, some part of Palmyra's heritage might survive. So he stayed silent until they killed him. On August 18, 2015, ISIS hung his body from a Roman column in Palmyra, thinking they were displaying their victory over the director of idolatry. They were actually creating a monument to something they could never understand, a human being who loved knowledge more than life, who valued cultural memory more than personal survival, who believed that protecting the past for the future was worth any sacrifice. Khaled al-Asaad didn't just defend antiquities, he defended the idea that human civilization, in all its diversity, creativity, and beauty, is worth preserving against forces of ignorance and destruction. He lost his life, but barbarism didn't win. The treasures he protected survived. The memory he defended endures. The heritage he served continues. And every person who studies Palmyra, who learns about its history, who visits the partially restored ruins, who sees the artifacts Khaled saved, is benefiting from his sacrifice. He was from Palmyra, and he stayed, even though they killed him, because some things are worth dying for. Cultural memory is one of them.